Thank you for tuning in to The Aligned Operator by BellaConnections. If today's conversation inspired you, share it with a fellow entrepreneur who's ready to grow with more focus and less chaos. Remember, scaling your business doesn't have to mean losing balance. It just takes clarity, consistency, and connection. To learn more or connect with our community, visit us at BellaConnections.com. Thanks so much. We've got a really special guest here, Damon Burton, who is going to be sharing some incredible information he has collected over 20 years working with organic traffic and SEO. And he's got some, excellent optimization and processes that he's worked through that has grown his business to seven figures and up, with recurring revenue. And nearly 20 years ago, as a father, three beat $1 billion company or outranking their website on Google. So since then, he's really kind of dove into a lot more of the SEO and found his really love for it and helped build an international search engine marketing company that's worked with NBA teams and Inc. 5000 and Shark Tank features and so much more. So he's done some incredible things, including he's donated money to help cover kids' lunches in Utah, as well as written a really great book, The Outrank, that he actually shared with me that I really enjoyed, a lot on Google's search results without paying for ads and so much more. So he's here today to help us really optimize our organic traffic and gain some more leads and kind of really work with what we got. So thank you, Damon, so much for being here. I really appreciate you coming on with us.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to chat, and thanks for facilitating this. So what I'm going to go over today is, as Michelle touched on, is organic traffic, but I'm also going to cover two different channels. So my background is SEO, but in addition to that, I've grown my business a lot in the last 2 years through also social media. So I don't offer social media, but I want to share how I've leveraged social media to increase. And so the way that I built out this presentation, again, there's like no sales pitch or anything. So this is just to help the group. I'm going to walk through how you can dual purpose this strategy, building brand awareness and content for social media and also for search engines. So I'll share my screen here, and as we go, feel free to jump in, and if you have any questions, you can either kind of interrupt and I'll go over them while we're on that topic, or you can save them for the end. So either way, we'll keep this pretty casual. So what I want to walk through is how I accidentally and then turned it into an intentional method of adding an extra $1 million into revenue after I turned off social media. And so where I want to start, since this is the Streamline to Scale group, efficiencies matter. And so what I want to avoid is complicated things like this. We're going to start with social media. And then as we segue into when we go over through the processes that we can use, we're going to transition in how we can use those same things in social media. So there's a lot of great things like this where you do social media and it's like this big complex calendar, but this was just too much for me. So if you do this thing, that's cool. But for me, I want to shoot myself because I don't want to get into different post types of, do I do a text post on a certain day, a video type on another day, images on one day, different days of the week, different times of the day, if it's a full moon, if Mercury is in retrograde, all these different things, right? So what I wanted to do though, is I wanted to figure out a way to make it repeatable like this, but without all the complicated mess. So what I did is a few years ago, I deleted social media. And I mentioned my wife here because, bless her heart, because we all know that if you delete social media, it doesn't truly go away. Like if you delete Facebook, you can just log back in the next day and everything's there. So what I did is my wife logged in and she deleted every post I'd ever made. She deleted every comment I'd ever made on anybody else's post. And if you want to know how much you truly love and trust your spouse, give them access to your private messages and then have them go through and delete all your DMs. So my wife went through and spent weeks deleting all my content. Now, after that, Well, at that time, I had a pretty hard line between business and personal engagement on social media. And so if a client would add me on Facebook, I would largely ignore them. And then when I deleted everything, I realized I had somebody that started as a friend first and then became a client. And now I no longer had a way to communicate with them because that's how we had engaged, was on Facebook. So I got thinking, okay, crap, I got to turn this back on. But if I turn this back on, why don't I be intentional about it? And so, I was really good at filtering out all the drama. So it wasn't anything crazy why I turned it off. I just realized I was unproductive. And so I said, if I'm going to turn this back on, how do I do it and be productive? And the conflict I started to run into was, okay, I like talking about my family and my wife and my kids. How do I do that without boring a business audience? And then on the opposite side of that, I like talking about business and entrepreneurship and SEO. So how do I not bore my friends and family? And then eventually I said, I don't care, because both of those are the types of things that I like to talk about, and both of those are me. So I started posting content. So what I started to realize is people would start to follow me for business advice and SEO advice. So I'd talk about things like how to increase organic traffic, but then I'd also share the journey of being a parent and a husband, and showing my kids little entrepreneurship things as I went. And what started to happen is I started to get messages of gratitude. And so on a weekly basis, I get things like this to say, hey, appreciate you sharing that thing. And so I started to kind of pay attention to how I was influencing things and cataloging those. And so that's the first thing we're going to start to touch on is, as you start to share your expertise, just screenshot these things. And later I'm going to show you how you leverage these to be a scalable component that you can use for content. And so over and over and over, I'd start to get all these messages of gratitude. Now, some of these people you may know. Marley Jackson is big in the ClickFunnels world. Rebecca Zung is a big celebrity divorce attorney. And so I'd get all these little messages about business and personal gratitude. So from there, I go, okay, well, that's great. How do I turn this into money? And so what happens is, when you put out your different pieces of content, people eventually resonate with you as a human. So I started to get DMs like this. So Dollar Shave Club is $1 billion company. And so I started to get inbound leads like this without doing any outbound lead generation. It was just through sharing content. And so this turned into lead generation from big companies. I started to get quantifiable deals like this. This DM turned into a $4,000 deal. This one turned into $6,000, and then a $2,000 month retainer. This was a $7,500 month retainer, and on and on and on. So what I started to realize is, here's how we start to get into the tactical and how you monetize this, is what I realized is I said, why are people coming to me? Because I'm not pitching anything. And I realized that it's not the knowledge, but it's the results and implementation, because all of us have a cell phone and a computer, and there's countless amounts of knowledge that's already available. Pretty much everything that I do, anything that you offer, can basically be found on YouTube. So people aren't necessarily paying for the knowledge, they're paying for the trust and the results and the implementation. So this starts to get into content and why you start to give things away. So I started to give away everything for free. So Michelle talked about how I offer a book. I give away my book for free. I come out physically out of pocket to send my book. I've spent, I think, $3,000 last time I checked in printed copies and shipping. Everything I give away online, I almost never have a call to action. And so what I realized is free is profitable. And so to this date, I've had my agency for 17 years. And over that time frame, free has by far been the most profitable source of lead generation. And the reason why is there's basically three types of content consumers. So there's the first type of person that takes your advice and runs, and that's okay because they were never your client to begin with. But what happens is you now start to build your reach and your reputation. The second type of content consumer is the person that doesn't need your service now, but they may later, or they send a referral. And then the third type of content consumer is the person that just buys your thing now. So in my mind, there's no reason not to give away everything for free. So we're going to walk through a couple examples like this. In giving away all of your content for free, you start to get tagged. So this gentleman, Matt, I didn't know who he was at the time. This was actually just a couple of weeks ago. So somebody made a post that says, who specializes in SEO. I got tagged by half a dozen people, and a lot of these people are big people with big audiences, and some of them I don't even know. So you start to build a reputation for what you offer because you start to build subconscious trust and relationships with all these people by pushing out your content for free. So after I got tagged in Matt's post, look who sent me a friend request. So then Matt reaches out to me. And then after Matt connected, he sent me a message, and look who sent me a referral. So this all happened within just 24 hours after I got tagged. And so what you want to do is you're building a reputation, which will drive referrals. And then this gentleman, Matt's referral, ended up buying. So I have countless examples of this. So, hey, I'm a starter, drop me a line at this, let's talk. So what happens is you start to get all these inbound referrals by giving away all of your expertise for free. So a common thing that I get is, well, I don't want to give away all my advice because then why would people pay me? So we kind of covered some of that already. But the other thing is you also want to have leads that value time more than money. And so the people that are going to take your service and run just because you put out a single post are not going to be the best clients anyways, because they're going to be the cheaper clients that are trying to save a buck here and there. And so we all know that the clients that value time more than money are the ones that get out of the way and you can deliver a better product. So this just turns into countless sorts of inbound lead generation here. So what do we want to do now with this information? So here's where we get into the tactical. So here's where you can start taking notes on how to actually do this at scale. So first of all, find out which platform your audience is on. I started only on LinkedIn first. Now, what's been interesting is as I've scaled the strategy over the different platforms, I will get people that follow me from one platform to another. So a lot of times I'll have people connect with me on LinkedIn, follow the content there. And then because we connect on a human element, then they follow me over on Facebook, which has a little bit more personal content. And then they'll convert on Facebook. They'll send me a message on Facebook. And so usually what happens is people will say, hey, I know you do SEO, but that was really cool what you said about your wife or your kid. And so that's when they convert. So don't be afraid to share your personal information, because they may follow you for your business service, but they're going to convert when they relate to you as a human. So send out a couple connections a day. There's a lot of people out there that say pitch in the DMs, and they have this whole outbound approach of DMs, and that's fine, but that's not what this is. So the goal is not to pitch them, it's to connect them, because once you're connected in your networks, then they see your content. And then again, that's when they convert, is when they start to relate to you in your content. So I'm going to walk you through my strategy on LinkedIn. Now you can take this kind of same thing and tweak it depending on your different platform, but I would focus on one platform first, perfect that, and then kind of tweak it from there and go to a different platform. For example, I focus on LinkedIn. That's where my audience is. And then I do a lot on Facebook as well. My team takes my content and repurposes it on Instagram. I don't personally spend my time on Instagram, but here's what's interesting is Instagram gets way more views for me than Facebook and LinkedIn. And I don't get shit for conversions. I don't think I've had a single lead or a single sell off of Instagram. So don't pay attention to the vanity metrics, because Instagram consistently drives more views, but it's just not where my audience is. And so I don't get sales on it, but I still do it for branding and consistency. So don't get caught up in the vanity numbers. Pay attention to what you're actually monetizing. Now, after you connect, set expectations and say goodbye. Because again, we're not wanting to pitch them. We're not wanting to annoy them. We want them to stay in our network. So the next slide is where you want to take a screenshot. This is going to be the most valuable slide in the presentation. So here's my pitchy, my non-pitchy pitch, as you'll see here in the bottom, in how I connect on LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn's a little bit different than some of the other platforms, because on LinkedIn, you can send an initial message and then a follow-up message. So on this first message on LinkedIn, I say, hey, not looking to pitch anything. Just like to see where new connections go, because you want to proactively diffuse everybody being concerned about a sales pitch. And then once you connect, you start with something personal. Now, over here in green, I put a little notes on the intention of each of these lines. So I've adjusted this message over the years to proactively diffuse issues that would come back and feedback and replies I would get. And I haven't changed this in about a year and a half because it works so well. So this first line is start with something personal, or set expectations. You'll notice they say, I'm going to let you go. And so what I realized is when I added that line, then people would basically go, oh, okay, well, he's not going to bother me, so I might as well at least listen to what he has to say. And then I start with something personal. Happy married for 16 years, 3 kids, favorite place is San Diego. Then I get in a little section of credibility, but note that it's not a sales pitch. So I give them a little bit of background, where I've been published, types of clients I've worked with, and that I wrote a book. And then I literally say blah, blah, blah. The reason why I put the blah, blah, blah is because I started to realize people would reply and say, hey, is this a bot? And so by putting in the blah, 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 then it diffuses that, where people go, okay, a bot's not going to put blah, blah, blah. I suppose you could, but... and then at the end, I encourage a reply. And so I put, thanks, that's a wrap for the non-pitchy pitch, your turn. And the last tweak I made to this was the phrase non-pitchy pitch, because every once in a while I get somebody that would say, hey, you said that you weren't going to pitch me back here, and then you just did. I didn't really pitch them. I just gave my background and explained my expertise. I didn't ask them if they want to get on a call. I didn't ask them if they need SEO. I just said, here's my background. And once I put non-pitchy pitch, that comment stopped. Now, what's fascinating about this is I get more compliments than anything. I would guess out of 20 people that I send this to, 15 of them say nothing. 4 of them give compliments, and then 1 of them might say something like, whatever. But I get way more compliments than I get any sort of negative response. And out of anybody I presented this to in other masterminds, that's the most common feedback I get, is that they get compliments on this. So this format works really well. So obviously adjusted accordingly to your industry and your background and things like that. So here's an example. I absolutely love this way better than any LinkedIn approach I've taken. All right. So now we've established the intention of doing this. It's to connect and then expose people to your content. So let's start walking through how you scale your content process. So what you want to do is you want to post daily. There's a couple reasons. One is the algorithms will reward you for consistency. Two, followers will begin to trust you. So it's just like everybody talks about post daily on YouTube or do your podcast daily or whatever, because people start to follow your cadence and your frequency, and then they start to look forward to that. So you start to build an audience with consistency. Now, I talked about screenshotting things. So every time you get a message of gratitude, or, even like this right now, where we're on this Zoom, screenshot this and talk about, what you learned today. And then what you do is just catalog it. So I have this folder here. It's like twice that big now, but you'll see this arrow is 285 items. I have countless things that I've just saved from private messages I've had, text messages I've had, things that will come up in this. I see we have a couple things in the chat that are pending. So depending on what those might be later, I might screenshot that. I might talk about how we taught something today. So this is where earlier we were talking about the spreadsheet, where we don't have to create a complicated spreadsheet. This makes it so it's not overwhelming, because then you transition from having to do content creation to doing content documentation. It's easy to document. All you do is screenshot and catalog your life. And then from there, you can write a story about it. So what I do is after that is most of the content that I publish is Facebook first. I'm just personally more there. Then what I do after that is I put it in Trello. So nearly everything that I publish on LinkedIn at some point has already been on Facebook. And then what we've narrowed it down to is, you see these little header columns up here, is we've noticed we get better engagement on inspirational content on Mondays and Tuesdays. Business related content performs better on Wednesdays through Thursdays. And then Fridays are kind of a throwaway day on LinkedIn, because it's a business platform. People check out early or are gone on Fridays. And so we don't want to put the super engaging content there, because we don't want to miss the opportunity to get better visibility on it, but we also want to keep the algorithm going. So we'll just put something funny or personal. So start to pay attention to what types of content perform better on which platforms you're on. Now, here's what's really important, is also pay attention to the time frame, because the time frame will make a big difference. I started to notice that when I publish content between 6:30 a.m. and 7:30 a.m., I'm in mountain time, that the content performed noticeably better. So we're talking about an average view count of 2,500 views to 10,000 views in the first 24 hours versus 500. So it was a huge difference. Now, I don't have data to explain why, but I have a good guess. So my assumption is that if they're on the East Coast, they've made it through traffic, they're sitting at their office, they've got their coffee, whatever, and they're killing time for 10 or 15 minutes. They're on the West Coast, they just woke up and they're taking care of business, and they're also killing 10 or 15 minutes, but for different reasons. And so you may have this different window of opportunity and exposure. So start to pay attention to which content performs better at which timeframes. So after that, what happened is this started to work really well, but it also started to become very time consuming, because what I would do is I post my content in the morning, and then I'd go through and I'd engage on other people's content. I'd kind of prime it. So what happens is when you go engage on other people's content, then naturally a lot of them are going to go, oh, who's this person? And then go look at your profile. So figure out the type of people that you want to resonate with, that you want to network with, that you want to do business with, and go engage on their content. So they start to see your name popping up. What happened though is, to give you an example of time frame where I started to be able to monetize this, is in the first it probably took about 3 months before I started to notice engagement picking up. And then it was about the 6 months into this where I realized I was getting contracts out of this. And so then at 9 months, I said, I should really go back and look at this and see how much I've monetized. And within 9 months, I added about $150,000 in recurring annual contracts. So since then, it's been a couple of years. So since then, we've done this at scale now. And so it's gone into a couple $1 million. So it clearly became valuable, but it also became very time consuming. So I had to figure out, how do I do this at scale while maintaining my personal integrity and voice, but I can't spend my time everywhere. And so what I did is I hired a VA, and now they tell me where to spend my time. So for what I do is I still publish all the content. I put it in Trello. So it's still my voice and my written word, but they'll go publish it for me in this time frame. So now that saves me the time of publishing the content. After I publish it, they'll go through the comments. And then when you start to increase your visibility, you start to get a lot of followers and comments. A lot of the comments are just generic, and so they're not an opportunity to answer a question. They're not an opportunity to build a relationship or establish business, but you still want to acknowledge the comment. So what I did is I hired a VA, and I said, for the first 30 days, do nothing. Just pay attention. And so for the next 30 days, I continued to do the engagement. What I wanted to do was say, so my VA's name is Kath. So I said, Kath, I just want you to see my voice and understand how I engage with people so you can better understand when I should communicate and when I shouldn't. And so then what she does each morning now is she sends me a Slack message that says, here's all the comments that you should go spend your time on. So that's how you can start to do this at scale, because now you publish the content, still your voice, or you draft the content, still your voice, but now somebody else can publish it for you and somebody else can manage the communication and tell you where to spend your time. So what I usually run into next is when I share this to somebody says, well, my business is different, and it's not. You can roll out the same process to just about any type of industry. And so I'm going to show you a couple examples. This guy's hilarious. His name's James McMahon. He's a divorce attorney and he also works with DUIs. So this guy has a massive following. And if you pay attention to his posts, so here's, I screenshot a couple examples. If you just started dating a drug dealer because of the layoffs, save my number. This guy got 26 comments, 98 shares, 469 engagements within just a day or two. No sales pitch, just added personal humor. The amount of shares outpaces the amount of comments, and then those shares have comments. That's all free exposure and traffic. And then he'll do other things. Whatever's relevant, he'll also chime into. Need a divorce so you can qualify for Biden's $10,000 student loan forgiveness? Hit me up. Look at the amount of engagement on the left, 1.1 thousand engagements, 44 comments, and 132 shares. This guy gets massive traffic and exposure for free. So I want you to pay attention to business versus personal. So earlier I showed a couple examples of where I talk about SEO and organic traffic increases. So if I look down here at the bottom, you'll see that this post got 5,600 views. And if we start to compare the different content types, here's another one about SEO and it got 6,000 views. Now watch what happens when you start to talk about personal content. So here's where I talked about my kid selling his first entrepreneur journey. 164 comments, 2 shares, and 9,500 views. Here's where I was talking about, I didn't have the opportunity to travel as a kid, so now as an adult, I travel a lot and I bring my kids with me and expose them to different things. 13,000 views. So this again reinforces the difference between talking, or the importance of talking about personal stuff and sharing who you are as a human, in addition to sharing your expertise in whatever industry you're in. Now, earlier, I also talked about my wife. Usually that makes me relatable, right? And so there's another reason why I put that in there is to further reinforce the importance of showcasing who you are as a human and showcasing what you do on your day-to-day outside of business. So now let's get into the tactical about how you can scale some of these content strategies too. So in addition to documenting your live, when you want to talk about business expertise, there are tools that you can use to find what questions your audience are already asking or they already have in their mind. So you don't have to shotgun and guess this. You can actually figure out questions that your ideal buyers already have and then write content about that. So here's a funny meme that I saw. So once I became an entrepreneur, I finally understood the scene where Yoda gets so tired of answering Luke's questions that he just dies. So what is funny about this is these questions are where the money lies into. And so these are the problems and the pain points that your consumers have. So this becomes your content topics that you can write about. So there's different tools that you can use to find out what these content topics are and these questions are. So the first one is SpyFu. So you can go in here and type in whatever industry you're in. And what it's going to do is create a text-based list of different types of pain points and questions that the consumers have about whatever industry you're in. Now, another really popular one a lot of you might be familiar with already is Answer the Public. What Answer the Public does is something similar to SpyFu, but it goes into more detail. So you can type in this case, I just put internet marketing companies, and it'll spit out a graphical wheel of the who, what, when, where, and why of questions consumers are already asking Google. And so what you can do is drill down on these. And so here's like a sample where it says, are digital marketing agencies worth it? So if you're in the internet marketing space, then you could create a blog post that says, here's why investing in a digital marketing agency is worth it, and talk about the pain points and FAQs and all the things, like all the common questions that you get, like the example of the Yoda thing, like everything that you get on a day-to-day basis or reoccurring question, that should be a content piece. All right, so I'm going to ask a question here. So we've talked about social media a lot. Here's a question that has an interesting answer. So what drives the most traffic? So we basically have 4 types of traffic. There's a couple more, but paid ads on social, paid ads on search engines, organic social media, and organic search engine results. So go ahead and drop a comment in the chat and tell me which one you think drives the most volume of traffic. So we're talking about from traffic source to website. All right. Okay, so it's non-paid search engine traffic. Now that might not be a surprise, but what's surprising to me is the vast significance and difference of volume. So Conductor did a survey a while ago where they kind of broke down these traffic sources. So if you're doing paid ads, you're doing social media, whatever, keep doing that. But look at how big of a chunk of revenue you're potentially missing. Like organic traffic drives by far the majority of available lead to source traffic that's available online. So here's where I want to talk about how you can leverage what we've talked about on social media also for the benefit of organic traffic on search engines. So a lot of the things that we've talked about and how to document what's going on in your life, how to use these money magnet topics through Answer the Public and SpyFu, take and build those out to also be a content calendar for your website and your blog. And so you can, I like keeping things simple. So we just use a really simple spreadsheet at my agency where we go, okay, let's map out the next 6 to 12 months. And the reason why we map out a calendar is because we try to tie it into timeliness. So in January, there's New Year's, there's resolutions. A lot of times you can tie content into that. February is going to be Valentine's. So depending on your industry, you can tie things into that. So you can double down on the relevance of whatever topic you're going to talk about it and tie it to a holiday or event or an occasion, things like that. So map this out in advance. The other reason why it's convenient to map this out is because candidly writing sucks. So if you have a blueprint in advance of what you're going to write about, then when you have a good day and you put on your writer's cap, you can crank out a bunch of content instead of trying to half-ass it on a day because you're in a rush. Now, pay attention to the compounding effect of content when you be consistent with it. So here's an example of a client where we focused on reoccurring content. In 1 year, they increased their traffic by 4,000 visitors per month. Here's an example of a shorter time frame, 80 days, increased their traffic by 54%. Here's another client in just 60 days, 186% increase in organic traffic, 7,000 visitor increase. Now, when this compounds, or when you use different types of content, so this is a client where this time frame is in 1 week, but we have been working on them for a year or two. So the compounding effect is when you increase the credibility of your website, you start to compress time. And so what may have taken a year initially to gain traction now takes less and less time because your website becomes more credible. Ultimately, Google wants to serve authorities because when Google shows an authoritative website that solves a problem and answers a question, it makes Google look good. So when you focus on solving these problems, answering questions, and helping your audience with pain points, then you serve the audience, and then Google recognizes that those people stay on your website longer or they buy your thing, therefore your website is better, which makes them look good when they recommend your website. And here's another example, compounding visitors over time. Now they're up 20,000 visitors on a daily basis. So a couple sample clients. Now from here, because we've taken all this time to be strategic about the content, and there's ways that you can amplify that content. So since you already know what content resonates, what content answers pain points for your clients, then you can amplify it. So you can take your written content. So here's a sample blog piece. You don't need to be able to read the text, but this is a sample we did for Utah Jazz Team Store. So this is their retail division. After we wrote the content, then you can take and repurpose it. So you can take that text and convert it into a shareable infographic. Now you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to go research more content. You just repurpose it into a different visual format. There's all sorts of free tools that are out there that you can use to repurpose this content. Same thing. Text into videos. So what you do with this is now you have diversified content that you can publish on your website, and you can also repurpose this content back onto social media again too. So what started on social media, you write a post, then you elaborate it, put it on your website as a longer form blog post, and then once you have it a longer form, then you can convert it into graphics and videos, and then you can go back and also repurpose that back on your social media. Now what's cool about doing this for search engines is when you publish diversified content, then again we talked about being an authority. So now Google trusts you more. And then what it's going to do is it's going to rank that website higher. In addition to ranking your website higher, because you have repurposed content, then you also have the potential for that repurposed content video to show up in the video carousel, the repurposed images to show up in the image carousel. So now you have multiple touch points, which increase the potential for you to get a click from a lead. And at the same time, you also suppress your competition because there's only so many results that you can take on page one. All right. Now, what you can also do is you can let other people create content types for you. And so there's a way, there's a content piece that we call outreach. And what we do is we reach out to other people and we leverage their audiences for our behalf. So in this case, this was a medical client. And there's tools out there, like one of them is called Ninja Outreach. Another one's called Pitchbox. And what they do is you can type in a keyword for your industry or a phrase that you want to monetize, and it'll tell you who already talks about that thing and has your audience already. And it'll try to collect their contact information, and then you engage them. And what you do is you say, hey, I'm going to write a piece of content. So in this case, we're going to write a piece of content about treatments to help patients with anxiety. Would you like to contribute? So of course, people want to showcase their expertise and get their name and brand out there as well. And so what you do is you catalog the replies. Now, when you get those replies, I'd recommend making sure they're unique, run it through something like Copyscape, so you're not publishing duplicate content, because search engines will pay attention to websites that have unique content, and you can get dinged for duplicate content. So after you kind of screen the content, then what you do is just catalog and also make that into a blog post. So this is a blog post that just goes down. There's more than these 2 replies, but you just kind of catalog it. Now, here's how you leverage this. What you do after that is you go, hey, post it on social media. We asked the experts, what are treatments to help patients with anxiety? And 8 experts gave their opinion. So you can publish this on social media. And then what we do is after we publish it, we tag them. So we tag these contributors and we tag them on social media and say, thanks for your contribution. Well, now that they're tagged, a lot of them are going to want to showcase their feature. And so they share this too. So it gets in front of their social media audience. But because we also collected their contact information when we asked them to contribute, so now generally we have their email, then you can email them and say, hey, you're now famous, you're on my blog, here's the link, go share it with your audience. So it makes all these people feel good, it increases their exposure, but you get the content and you get to go in front of their audience. Now, not everybody's going to share it, but what's nice about this is even if nobody shares it, you have all this unique content that you just added to your website that increases the credibility and becomes a content piece that gets fed to Google to increase your traffic. So what happens after this is when you start publishing content, especially when we talked about being vulnerable and being transparent and showcasing your personal life, eventually you're going to get people that come in that are less than complimentary to your content. So here's an example of a gentleman. So I made a post a while back about how grew up lower middle class. And so I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to be able to facilitate family gatherings. So we built like this indoor pool a while ago. And so I was just kind of reflecting back then. And I said, this is so amazing that I now have the fortune to be able to create these memories with family and friends. So I made a post about that. And then I ended up getting this guy that sent me a private message that said, congrats on the success. In addition to hard work, might be good to layer in some lessons about how to be a good person instead of look at my pool post. It's kind of shallow, no pun intended. I'm pretty sure that that pun was 100% intended. But what I did is I gave the guy the benefit of the doubt. And I said, look, I must be doing something right to attract a comment like that. And I basically said, go back and look at my posts and you will see a dozen examples in just the last 2 weeks of what you're preaching here. The majority of my content is value first, tips, humility, things like that. And so this guy was just ignorant, didn't take the time to actually go look. So I replied back and I said, you can just go look and I'm already doing the things that you're talking about. And that's when I came up with a coin that I've termed selective attention disorder, because he said, yo, Damon, seriously, I don't have time for that. And then he blocked me. So haters are going to come with territory. Now, what's even more ironic in him talking about this is one of the posts that he would have seen is how I often talk about giving without expecting in return. And so this was a picture that I had taken after a unique moment happened. There was a weekend a while back where my wife and kids were driving around and we were in the left turning lane, and past the intersection on the right was somebody selling something. And I couldn't tell, and I couldn't get over because I was in the turning lane. But you know how sometimes you have those moments where you feel compelled to take some sort of action or go explore whatever it is. So after I turned left, I did a U-turn and I went back. What ended up being was this older lady in retirement age, had an adult son who found out he had cancer. And so what she'd done is just went to Walmart or something, bought some prepackaged cookies and was selling them, just marking them up and trying to get some money to help support her son through cancer treatment. So when I pulled up, I said, I told my wife and kids to stay in the car. And I said, let me go see what's going on over here, and found out the story. And then I waved them over. And when my kids were coming over, I was talking to the lady and I said, you know, how much to just buy them all? And she was kind of caught off guard. And I said, I just want to help out. And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, how about $300? And she started crying. And so I felt compelled to help a little bit more. So I ended up giving her, I don't remember, $500. And she walks off crying, calls her son and her nephews, her nieces and nephews just kind of continued to help us. And then I let my kids pick some cookies, and I said, I don't want all these. Let my kids have a couple, and then you can keep selling them. So I ended up helping out this lady. And then she sent me, a message later that said, thank you for your generosity. Now, I share this for a couple of reasons. One is, share the moments that happen in your life and things like that. Two is the guy that sent the message was just an asshole. He didn't, he just had a bone to pick for no reason. But third is you end up creating an army. So the lady's name was Phyllis. Phyllis now shows up in my content all the time. It's probably been a year and a half, 2 years. And so as you share your life's journeys and you be relatable as a person, then people connect with you on ways you wouldn't expect. And so Phyllis is always in my content and always has my back, and she stands up for haters, and it's pretty funny. So it's been a really rewarding experience. And that wouldn't have happened if I didn't share the moment that I was exposed to with Phyllis. And I didn't expect any of that to happen, but it's been a really cool reward. So in addition to being able to monetize these things and build an audience, there's a lot of personal rewards that come through it, and just the wild card of it. Now, there's a really great quote. If you're not familiar with Dan Kennedy, he's a real famous marketer. He says, if you haven't offended someone by noon each day, then you're not marketing hard enough. And so it just kind of comes with the territory. And after I had that guy send me that message, then I made a post about it. And I didn't call him out or anything, but I said, in the last week, I've had multiple posts go viral. Here's what I've learned. The posts about love, money, and business tend to be the ones that attract the most haters. And below that post, I put I censor it because this isn't my audience, so I don't know who I'm going to offend or not, but that's me flipping off in the post. And so I talked about, with each hater, my mission becomes more clear. Now, what was interesting is I didn't know how well that post would go over. I knew that I would get some people that would be offended. It ended up being one of the highest visibility posts I've ever had. 110,000 impressions, reposts, 296 comments, 774 engagements. And I really didn't get a lot of haters. I did get some people that said, that's maybe not the best idea. So he says, just not sure a picture of you flicking the bird to everyone on LinkedIn is the best decision you could have made. But if you'll notice, this other gentleman, Chad, said, no, I disagree. And so when you take a position and make a comment for what you believe in, you will offend some people, but you will also attract other people. And so I wrote, nothing wrong with alienating a sensitive audience. Now, here's where this becomes more interesting, is more people came in and said, if the bird offends you, then you're not in tribe. I love your thoughts. Photo's perfect. This guy I thought was the most hilarious. He said, you engaged with this post. He already won before you typed the first character. Now, here's what's funny. That Ian guy later came back and said, you're right. I'd be interested in discussing SEO with you. So not only by me picking a position and holding my ground did I get more engagement, but I also converted somebody. So I'm going to end this with a couple really great quotes from a gentleman named Tony Watley, who I've got to know over the years. Had the privilege of actually just being on his podcast about a week ago. And he has this great quote that says, it's time for you to put your purpose above your fear and step out of the shadows. And so what happens as you continue to push out your personal representation, you begin to build a brand around you. And so what you have people that start to stand up for you. And so when you do these things where you just give without expecting a return, you start to get messages. And again, like I just screenshot these. So this is a multi-chain thing that is interesting. So I got a message from this gentleman named Ben that said, Damon helped me out without expecting anything in return. But then he drew a cartoon about me. And so after the cartoon, then I had another client that sent me a bracelet that says WWDBD. Any guesses on WWDBD stands for? I think the first part's obvious, but it stands for, what would Damon Burton do, bitches? Wait, WWDBD. Yeah, something like that. So one of my clients, Courtney, sent that to me. Now after I got the cartoon and then after the bracelet, I had somebody blend the cartoon and the bracelet, and now they sent me pins that say WWDD. And so you end up building this tribe, and this is like an example of the wild card. The amount of appreciation that went into somebody taking the time to draw cartoons, make products, and things like that. Like I can't. It's hard to put into words the level of appreciation that on their side I've impacted them, but to me, the amount of time they'd spend doing something like that, it's hard to communicate. And then I get things like this, like I get people sending me bobbleheads. and just all sorts of random things. So I get the most random things now, and all I do is post content. I don't do anything other than what I've shared here, where I screenshot and post things, and it drives business and makes a huge impact. So the last thing, another quote by Tony Watley. I always think this is good to end with. He says, "We are each born with confidence, courage, and curiosity. Then society and other people ruin and dismantle it for us. You know you have a much higher potential than where you're currently at. You've always known. You watch others pursue and live your dream life. You keep telling yourself someday. It always seems impossible to start. Not enough time, not enough money, not enough knowledge, not enough. I'm here to tell you that the most of your potential is held back by fear, not the fear of failure, but the fear of judgment and criticism. You worry too much about what others might say or think about you, and everyone keeps living for someday, but fails to understand that could be today. Purpose above fear. Don't let critics limit you." So there you go. That's the end. Hope that helps. Happy to answer questions. I see we got a bunch in the chat here, so Michelle and I can kind of cruise through those and see what we got.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed it. I took loads of notes, and I know we were all in the chat like laughing and having fun and commenting on how good all the content was too. Like there's a lot of great little tips in there that I've taken several screenshots and a few pages of notes on so far. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is good. I see a lot of comments in here. Okay. All right, let's go through here. Or actually, instead of me scrolling through all these comments, why don't you just, anybody that has a question, you can just jump off mute and ask if there's anything I can help with. Bitches need to be added as an exclamation at the end of every statement.
Hey, Damon, thank you very much. And Michelle, good to see you. Thanks. That was really interesting because I do zero promotion, self-promotion at all. Like I hardly post. I used to post more, but even then it was just kind of like pictures, whatever, not really using it for promotion. Mm-hmm. And for my work as a copywriter, I'm just sort of I have no trouble finding work just mm-hmm. through doing good work and getting referred, but so I haven't done any outreach of any kind, really. So it's an interesting thing for me to see this. That's why I was really intrigued by to come here. So this was really cool to look at, and also just seeing LinkedIn. I think part of it is the fact that Facebook, for me, for years before I worked as an online. It's only in the last couple of years I worked in this online marketing sort of business thing. And mm-hmm. before that, it was all just friends and family. I used to delete people to try to keep my friend group under 100. That was my thing. Mm-hmm. And now I'm over 3,000, and I don't know any of them really, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. I'm kind of reluctant on Facebook, but on LinkedIn, which I hardly touch really, I could, it could be a good place for me to start. So anyway, basically, just thank you.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And on the Facebook thing, what I do is there's when you edit your friend list, there's a default category called restricted, and so every new contact I get that's not friends or family, I set them to restricted. And so what that does is it allows you to still publish personal content. So if you want to publish things that are only for friends and family, then when you set the visibility on that post to friends only, then restricted people don't see it. And so they don't know that you've restricted them, but you can then still separate forward-facing content from private content.
Yeah, interesting. I have heard that. But yeah, so I'd have to go back through the friend list and sort of filter.
Yeah.
But, cool. That's a way to do that. Yeah, because I'm sure old friends or family members, they're not really interested in my in some of the stuff that I would post if I'm trying to.
Well, you know what you end up finding is so I had that internal debate when I turned Facebook back on, was like, how do I not bore friends and family with business, and vice versa? Are business people going to care about my friends and family? And what you end up finding out is that surprisingly they are interested, because a lot of your friends and family don't know what you do day to day. They're like, oh yeah, Robin does that, but they don't know the details of it. So they end up finding it's fascinating when you start providing the details, and they can see the insights of what you actually do. And so it does increase the engagement. And then as I outlined in the presentation, it definitely helps on the business side when you talk about personal stuff. So it takes a while, like you got to gauge your comfort level.
Yeah, it's probably just at the comfort level, because it probably only helps business if you get the occasional funny comment from an old aunt or your mother underneath one of those posts, right? People are like, oh, it's kids. It's a real person.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so it took me a while to figure out what that comfort level for me was. And so, for example, like, let me go back up a slide here and then I'll share my screen again. I'll give you an example. So for me, like, I don't publish anything identifiable about my kids, but I like talking about them. And so I never mention their name and I never show their faces. But unless I just told you that, you would have never noticed.
Yeah, good point. I like that. Yeah, because same thing. I just had a baby not long ago, and I posted once, but not since, because I don't really like the idea of putting kids up all the time. That's just me personally, but I like that because then it's like, oh, you can talk about them without actually naming or even showing them.
Yeah, there's always a way, like, and I don't like with that picture, I'm not like, hey son, let me get the picture of the back of your head. Like, I don't stage it, but what I do is as I go, like in that moment, I'm like, oh, this is really cool. I'd like to talk about this. So what he's doing in that picture is he was inspired to start selling stickers. And so that was his first customer that he was mailing the stickers to. And so that was something that I was proud of and I wanted to talk about it. So I wrote the post days later as I was thinking about, oh, that'd be really cool to share that. And so then I went back and I was like, okay, is there a picture that I can share? And if not, then I'll just crop their heads off. So I don't want to do fake pictures, and I don't want to be toxic with my kids where I'm like, hey, I want to, I don't want to take advantage of my kids for social media.
Yeah.
So I just go find what I have to work with. So I'll write the post and then I'll go find what I have to work with.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
I think it's also really valuable to say, just throwing this in there, is that like you're also capturing those moments and those memories, because it is, it's like teaching them entrepreneurship and it's teaching them about life and a lot of in business, but also just being good humans in a lot of these things. So even though you're not always, you don't necessarily want to grab the front of them or anything like that, and you want to keep it, comfortable for them, it's still, you're grabbing those moments and those pictures for it. So I think that's really neat that you do that. And sharing your personal life, like you said, as well as the business side. Like I've noticed, I've struggled with that too, is like feeling comfortable sharing things on my Facebook and what to share. But what I'm finding is the more I do share, the more vulnerable I am, the more I'm getting from, people from, high school or family and things like that, relating and proud of me, as well as, getting clients coming in like, hey, I see you're doing this. Let's work together. So it's pretty cool. Like I got to work on my, what I am, comfortable posting, but I think I'm getting there. So.
Yeah. I mentioned the wild card earlier. The more vulnerable the post is, often is the more engagement or private messages you get. I remember I was on a podcast one time, and afterwards I got a really long private message from a gentleman that I just changed his perspective on life. And what was interesting is he talked about his struggles, which I have no relation to. Like, he talked about eating disorders and like things I've never experienced, and I certainly have never talked about. But because I shared my vulnerability, to him, that was his version of the same story. And so whatever my vulnerability I talked about, he's like, oh, that's my version of my eating disorder. And so I've had countless messages of impacting people directly and indirectly about things that it may or may not have anything to do with I've experienced or talked about. And so it kind of becomes this self-fulfilling thing where the more you do it, the more feedback you get, the more inspired you are. And so it's like motivating other people becomes your motivation. And then that's how I kind of started to expose this process. And then the fact that it also turns into business is just a bonus. And so, like, at the very least, it becomes a rewarding kind of experience.
Definitely helping people and being able to share that is super valuable. So Isaac has a question here. He's in a coffee or a cafe, so he can't really jump on. but he said, the question I've got is how long you think it takes someone just starting this approach to start seeing some results coming through?
So obviously it'll vary, but I can give you real life examples of me and then another person that does this. So for me, it was about 3 months before I started to notice consistent engagement, so that there would be some up and down. And then 6 months is where I went, oh, I've actually got a decent amount of business by then. And then 9 months is when I quantified it. And at 9 months, it had added $150,000. And since then, I haven't re-quantified it. Like, it's certainly into the millions because I've only done this at larger scale now. Now, there's another person that I've been mentoring that I've given this process to. He started, young kid, 19, and I recommended he delay this or do this a little bit slower because, you and the audience probably already have experience and this kid didn't. And so first I told him he needed to establish his experience. And so he wanted to get into web design and SEO. So I said, okay, well, here's a bunch of resources, go learn basics of it, web design. And then when he knew enough, I said, okay, now go do websites for free, because you need to understand how to communicate with clients. And when you start asking for dollars, there's going to be expectations and you can't deliver those yet. And so fast forward, ignore that time frame until he actually got some experience, then started, because that was probably about a year. But then when I said, okay, start charging and start doing this process, then he started, he got his first deal. I think he got a $5,000 website within probably about the same, about 3 months. And now he's getting, I think, I'd guess about 2 to 3 leads a month doing this. And so he's just, and still on the starting side of things, and he's still closing $2,000 to $5,000 websites, a couple a month.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And to be able to have that impact, like helping people gain that kind of, to be able to grow their business like that, that's huge. And for him to have that, it's awesome.
I would say consistency is super important, because it can obviously be frustrating in the first couple months putting in the work. So if you don't get anything in month 1, month 2, month 3, it's just part of the game. And so if you're not willing to, I post Monday through Friday. So pick a platform, commit to posting ideally daily, but I would say no less than 3 times a week. So if you're not willing to do that for at least 3 months, I wouldn't even do it at all, because if you do it for a month and then stop, you just basically wasted a month.
So you said pick a platform. I might have missed that earlier if you went over it, but do you recommend doing one, starting with one rather than trying to do several?
I'd perfect one first, get one monetizing. Because if you do multiples, you're going to dilute your effort, and then different platforms also have different results. So for example, when I was first engaging on LinkedIn, video content worked really well. Now it sucks. And then now it's coming back. And so, if you go into one platform and you're like, I'm going to do videos, and it sucks, then you get discouraged, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to screw that place, I'm going to go to this other place. Then you're getting distracted. So figure out what works on one first and know that it may change. So like on LinkedIn, videos worked really well, then text-based worked really well, and now videos are starting to work again. So get a process on one locked in and repeatable, and then go experiment with another platform, knowing that what worked on the first one may not work on the second one. So, like on Instagram, for me, images suck, but videos work really well as far as view count. But like I said in the presentation, I don't really get any. I think I've had like 1 lead off there and they didn't close. So I don't spend my time there, but my team does, because we're trying to figure out what does work. And so the view count's increasing. I think it's the nature of the platform. So like on Instagram, everybody's just distracted. It's just like instant gratification. And so it's a numbers game. So my assumption is that even though I don't currently get conversions off of it, but if my view count continues to increase, eventually there becomes an average number. So right now, if I get 2,000 views a day with 0 leads, if I keep at it and eventually get to 10,000 views a day, then I'll probably start getting 2 leads, something like that. So we're still pushing Instagram, trying to figure out what works or what the benchmark is before we go, oh, okay, now we know what the realistic expectations on that platform are. And then once we figure that out, then we'll move to something else.
Yeah, I think that's super valuable, especially like just starting out. Like I tend to get like overwhelmed if I'm trying to do too many at once. Like, I'll set these big goals. Like I'm going to post every day on Facebook and Instagram, and they're 2 totally different types of content that I'm going to do, and blah, blah, blah. And then, I dwindle off. But focusing on, at least a few a week of each, if I'm doing different content or something like that, I think is really valuable, or just choosing one for now.
Mm-hmm. And once you figure out what works and the process that you prefer, hire a VA. Like you can get a virtual assistant for cheap. As low as $3 an hour. But they're only going to be as good or as bad as the documentation you provide them. So that's why you have to figure it out first. Because if you're just like, go do that thing, you're going to be paying for nothing. So you have to figure out what works, then hire somebody and give them the documentation and how to follow the process.
Yes, that is key. Is like document everything as you're going, and just make sure you have it like refined before you pass it on. Otherwise, it's a headache to onboard. But doing it that way is a lot easier.
Yeah, cool. Let me show you one more thing on that note. Let me log in here. So as you perfect it, you can turn this into a machine and do it at scale. So you can take things like this, where I'm doing this recording right now. When I get this recording, I'm going to give it to my team because they know the processes now. And so this one recording will provide a month's worth of content, because what they're going to do is go through it and go, here's a little 30-second thing Damon said, here's a 90-second thing Damon said. And then based on the length and the content type, they know which platform to push it to. So I don't do any of this. So what you're looking at right here is I spent the time to work with my team to figure out the process, then I gave it to them. And so you'll see that I'll load this to Dropbox, and then after they chop it up, then they'll caption it. Then if they need revisions, but after they've quality controlled it, then they'll add it here. And then you'll see it just becomes this huge assembly line. And then when it's done, then they give it to me. So I don't do any of this stuff. But I took the time to work with the team and go, we need to figure out what works. And then now they can be productive because they're doing something intentionally instead of me just vomiting on them and going, do social media,
Yeah, that is huge. That is huge to have that process laid out like that, and that's so well organized. That makes me very excited, and Robin as well. It's like that's incredibly impressive, because it's so important to have that for the steps that need to be taken in order for people to make it faster for everyone else, but also so nothing gets dropped and things are going through without you having to kind of oversee every step.
Yeah. Well, cool. I appreciate the opportunity to, thanks for facilitating this, Michelle, and I thank everybody for jumping on. Any last questions? Wow, that's impressive pitches. Yes. There's other pitches on there. Well, cool. Well, thanks. Those that are on, if you have any questions, you're welcome to send me a message. And those that watch the replay, same thing. If I can help clarify on any of this, don't hesitate to ask.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Damon. It was so great to have you. Appreciate you.
You bet. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you.